Welcome back to another episode of Anthropology Unveiled with your host, Litea Aloha. It is time for our weekly meeting, my Anthropals, and hello to our new friends joining us today. We hope you enjoy yourself and possibly become a part of our family. But before we begin, I'd like to thank Leeward Community College for sponsoring this episode and allowing us to deep dive into the ancient world of the old. Today we'll be talking about the life, death, and burial context of King Tutankhamun, better known as King Tut. The grave of Mr. Tut has allowed archaeologists to gain insight on the burial practices, art, and craftsmanship of the ancient Egyptians. Tut's grave is known as the most intact pharaoh's tomb discovered from the New Kingdom era and is often noted to have a rich collection of artifacts. One of the more iconic aspects of King Tut's burial is the gold mask adorning the head of the mummified ruler believed to protect his body. But before this ancient figure became widely known to the people of the modern era, let's talk about what the humans of his time knew of him. King Tut was the son of Akhenaten, who was considered a controversial or even heretical figure. Akhenaten was the first ruler to decree that Egypt would become a monotheistic society following the god Aten. Fun fact, King Tut received a name change. His original name was Tutankhaten, which meant the living image of Aten. Under the rule of Tut's father, Egypt moved its capital from Thebes to Amarna, and even grew politically weak over his 13 years on the throne. After Akhenaten passed and Tut ascended to the throne at the young age of 9, around 1333 BC, the young pharaoh reversed everything his father did, restoring the original culture, religion, and stability of the ancient Egyptian society. Following these events, King Tut changed his name to what we know him as today. Unfortunately, Tut's rule was short-lived as he died at the age of 19 around 1323 BC. There are many theories regarding the death of the adolescent king. The most common theories are that he died of metabolic disease, tumorous conditions, or even infectious diseases. Another belief was that Tut was murdered, but this theory is often disregarded due to the fact that the only evidence supporting this claim is a fragment of bone found in the king's head. The problem with this is that the punctured bone could have been caused by a mistake during the excavation of Tut's mummy or grave goods surrounding the corpse. The bone fragment could have even been a result of an error during the mummification process during the recent days of Tut's death. But modern technologies have provided us with hints towards what may have been the real cause of death for young Tut. Through the utilization of DNA tests and CT scans, we're shown that Tut may have endured a fractured lower leg, malaria, and congenital deformities, as he was the result of generations of inbred Egyptian royalty. Regardless of his royal background, the resting place of the once pharaoh is so underwhelming that it's kind of strange. Many would say that King Tut's tomb is significant, but this statement may only apply to modern-day human society. Upon further examination of the tomb of King Tut, it is obvious that the young king's burial had been rushed and maybe even considered insignificant. The tomb itself is quite small and consists of a main burial chamber, annex, antechamber, and treasury. The walls of the tomb depict scenes of the journey through the afterlife and the deities Tut will encounter along the way. But the most interesting aspect of these paintings are the brown spots that cover the wall canvas throughout the entire structure. It is well known that King Tut's tomb is the only Egyptian burial site to have these brown markings riddled throughout the walls. Other evident aspects of the wall's paintings that show their rushed nature is the visible chisel marks on the walls that would normally be concealed, the slightly crooked images, lack of canvas primer before painting on one of the walls, and varying techniques on different walls. All of these things allude to the idea that there are multiple artists working on the paintings of the tomb simultaneously, but they must have faced a time constriction based on the poor quality of canvas care and prep demonstrated throughout various walls of Tut's tomb. Under normal circumstances, the burials of pharaohs are taken very seriously as they are extensions of the Egyptian gods themselves. So why has King Tut's tomb walls been painted as if it were a piece of sidewalk chalk art? The answer is simple. It was rushed as a result of political motivation. In 2009, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiques requested the help of the Getty Conservation Institute, otherwise known as GCI. They asked the GCI to look into the effect that the mysterious brown spots had on the paintings spread throughout Tut's tomb. All of their findings regarding the rushed paintings were discussed by us earlier, but GCI's Lori Wong shared the possible reality of how the brown spots existing in the tomb related to a fight for the ascension of the Egyptian throne. Because Tut had no kin of his own, his political advisor Ai and the military general Haramheb were prospects of becoming the next pharaoh. So in order to hurriedly undergo a coronation, Ai rushed the burial of King Tut. Ai wanted to ascend the throne before Haramheb returned to Egypt after fighting a war in the north. Wong noted that there are no other burials in the Valley of Kings of similar content to King Tut's that had evidence of brown spots, meaning that the primary cause of the mystery spots is the lack of drying time the paintings had before the tombs were sealed. From a normal perspective, you would think that the ancient pharaoh would have all the power and pampering in life and death. Through the paint situation alone, though, it can be implied that socioeconomic statuses only apply to the living, so in the end, we're all just some corpse. But it doesn't stop there. Throughout the course of my research period, many of the things I learned about the burial of King Tut piqued my interest and formed questions regarding the true identity of King Tut and the role he played in ancient Egyptian society. When looking further into Tut's burial and mummification, I found that the king's body had been prepared haphazardly. Experts noticed that the mummy of King Tut was prepared in a different way from the rest of the royal mummies belonging to the 18th dynasty. The cut used to disembowel Tut's body ran diagonally from his belly button toward the left part of his iliac crest, which is the curved part of the top of the hip, which forms the wing shape of the pelvis. But this cut is usually running straight along the iliac crest, which is shown on other mummies. The penis of Tut was also mummified erect when it is normally mummified laying flaccid. And the final aspect of Tut's unusual mummification was that resin was poured into his cranium 2 different times, and large amounts of resin were caked onto his body, which was much more than his predecessors. The excessive amount of resin used during the mummification of Tut burdened the excavators that were trying to undo all of the wrappings and adornments on the king's body. By observing the treatment of King Tut's body, it is clear that whoever was in charge of mummifying Tut either didn't care about the well-being of the pharaoh's physical form, or they had no choice but to skip steps and speed up the process. This led me to wonder, could the rushed and sloppy funerary processes of King Tut be fully accounted for by the political agenda of his chief advisor? Or could it have been the result of grudges held by Egyptian subjects against his heretical father? And King Tut just ended up becoming the target of these frustrations. The final strange aspect of King Tut's burial that we'll talk about is the small size of the tomb King Tut rests in. Nicholas Reeves, an archaeologist specializing in ancient Egyptian history, formulated a theory regarding the cramped nature of the supposed king's tomb. Reeves believes that King Tut is buried with his possible mother, Nefertiti. And here's why. The unexpected death of the boy king took the Egyptian society by shock, so of course, there was no official burial chamber prepared for the young Tut. As an urgent effort to provide Tut with a proper resting place, Nefertiti's tomb was reopened and expanded for him. This theory stems from the fact that the tomb is positioned to the right, which indicates a queen being buried in the structure. Under normal circumstances, the tomb of kings are normally in position to the left. Reeves also adds that the paintings on the north wall of the tomb depict the iconography that existed before King Tut. So, Anthropals, what do you think? Could this rushed burial have been the case of genuine effort of the Egyptian subjects to provide their king with a proper burial? The truth is, as of right now, we'll probably never know the full story, because any history regarding King Tut, Akhenaten his father, Smenkhare who is possibly his uncle or brother, and Tut's old chief advisor, was struck out by the former general Haramheb when he usurped the throne. But based on what we know, let's try to look into the role that King Tut played within ancient Egyptian society. In regards to his strange tomb situation and mummification, we can wonder if the people of Tut's era in Egyptian society truly recognized him as their king. Although Tut had restored the original ways of Egyptian culture, I wouldn't doubt if anti-monotheistic Egyptians held grudges against Tut because of his close familial connection to Akhenaten, the heretical ruler. Even if the funerary processes of King Tut had been rushed, anyone who holds immense respect and care for the king wouldn't dare to put minimal effort towards anything attached to the ruler's name. This then leads me to wonder if the workers rushed for fear of their life, or if they didn't place importance on the quality of the tomb and mummy of King Tut because those in higher positions, like Tut's chief advisor, didn't view his burial as significant. Because King Tut was a young boy who had ascended to the throne at the age of 9, his position in society could have been viewed as a joke. Many commoners could have possibly thought of Tut as a placeholder of the pharaoh title. But to wrap up today's podcast, I just wanted to leave you guys with a thought. To us modern-day humans, King Tut was an influential and significant figure in Egyptian history. But based on the archaeological context of Tut's burial, how important was he to ancient Egyptians of his time? If any of you guys want to take a look through the resources I use for today's podcast, I'll list the links below. Thank you for another fun-filled episode. I'll see you next time, Anthropals. This is your host, Litea, signing off of Anthropology Unveiled.